Rachel Zegler's recent comments surrounding the collapse of Disney's Snow White remake have pushed an already disastrous project into the realm of surreal spectacle. The film, once marketed as a bold reimagining of a classic fairy tale, has gone from a highly anticipated release to a $300 million cinematic catastrophe.
She didn't just star in a box office disaster. She poured gasoline on the flames and dared the world to watch it burn. Rachel Zegler's latest defense of Snow White isn't just bold, it's baffling. What should have been a quiet retreat after one of Disney's worst-performing films has turned into a bizarre campaign of denial, blame-shifting, and public declarations that are making Hollywood insiders increasingly uneasy. At the center of it all, a young star who refuses to back down, even as the ground crumbles beneath her.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
Let's start with the numbers, because as much as Zegler insists otherwise, they matter. Disney pumped more than $300 million into this Snow White reboot. Between the lavish sets, extensive reshoots, bloated marketing campaigns, and PR efforts, the studio went all in. But the result? An absolute catastrophe. The film didn't just underperform. It bombed so hard it now ranks among Disney's biggest financial flops. And yet somehow, that's not the most shocking part. The real twist came when Rachel Zegler stepped forward, not to express regret or acknowledge any missteps, but to declare that the movie was a misunderstood triumph.
Movie companies are going to look at her and they're going to say box office poison. And a lot of this is due to her behavior leading up to the film's release.
According to her, Snow White didn't flop because it was bad. It flopped because of political bias. In her words, a silent majority loved the movie, but was too afraid to admit it. She pointed to families in her personal life as proof, anecdotes, not analytics. She implied that somewhere out there, millions of secret fans were quietly enjoying the film, but felt silenced by society. It was a strange, almost conspiratorial explanation that left even her supporters scratching their heads.
This is Rachel Zegler, who Disney decided would be brilliant in casting because, as Rachel Zegler says, her millions of fans will line up no matter what she does to see her.
Then came the next phase, the redefinition of success. Zegler argued that box office numbers don't matter. That storytelling, not ticket sales, is what counts. Which might have worked if she wasn't talking about a $300 million tentpole film from the world's biggest entertainment company. According to her, Snow White succeeded because it delivered the message it was meant to, a message she believes is more important than honoring legacy, pleasing audiences, or even breaking even.
And Disney decided to hire the most insufferable girl boss narcissist that exists on Earth, who hates Snow White.
She openly dissed the original fairy tale, mocking the source material and proudly stating that it needed to be rewritten for the modern woman. She said the character of Snow White had to be overhauled to reflect empowerment, not beauty. That Prince Charming was outdated. That fairest of them all was a relic of a less evolved time. And while reinvention isn't necessarily bad, her tone wasn't about evolving the story. It was about replacing it entirely.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work.
She didn't seem to care about the fans who grew up with the original. In fact, she acted like they were part of the problem. And that's when things really turned. Her interviews took on a tone that many described as arrogant, even hostile. She didn't just defend the changes. She framed anyone who criticized them as regressive, close-minded, or politically motivated. Critics weren't just wrong. They were part of an anti-progress agenda. She said diversity should be the priority in storytelling.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Even above plot, character, or coherence. In her mind, DEI isn't just an ingredient. It's the main course. Story comes second. But here's the problem. Audiences didn't reject Snow White because they hate diversity. They rejected it because it felt preachy, disconnected, and hollow. It didn't feel like a fairy tale. It felt like a lecture. And when you spend more time proving a point than telling a story, people notice.
I'd say that this is one of Disney's biggest regrets ever. I mean, I checked, we've discussed it before. I checked Rotten Tomatoes, and the score is even lower than the last time we talked.
The magic was gone. The message, while well-intentioned, became a barrier between the audience and the film. Meanwhile, Rachel Zegler's career began to feel the consequences. Her star, once rising fast after West Side Story, began to dim. Major studios grew hesitant. PR departments flagged her interviews as unpredictable. Industry whispers grew louder. She was too risky, too polarizing. Her next film, a quiet indie project with a tiny budget and no real promotional push.
Look at this acting.
That at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
No big studio premiere, no gala, just a whisper in a theater near you, if you're lucky. And still, she doesn't stop. Every new quote adds fuel to the fire. Clips of her interviews become memes, her statements twisted and shared as proof of Hollywood's disconnect. One line in particular, "You just weren't ready for it," has become a punchline online, a shorthand for artistic denial. Instead of pulling back, she doubled down again, saying the film succeeded in all the ways that mattered, even if no one showed up to watch it. Then came the odd Gal Gadot comment. In an interview, she hinted that her working relationship with Gadot was not what I expected, and left it at that. The vagueness sparked immediate speculation. Was there on-set tension? Creative disagreements? It was just vague enough to cause a stir, and just pointed enough to suggest drama. Once again, Zegler had taken a potential PR recovery and turned it into a new headline, one Disney definitely didn't need. Behind the scenes, the studio was scrambling. Disney, already dealing with internal backlash over recent box office failures, reportedly regrets how the Snow White reboot was handled. Executives are quietly reassessing how projects get greenlit and how much freedom actors should have on press tours. They've now shifted focus to other releases, doing everything they can to bury this one. No press junkets, no promotional blitz, just a quiet drop on Disney Plus, and a hope that the world moves on. But Zegler won't let them. She continues framing the film as a misunderstood masterpiece, a work of art ahead of its time. She says her Snow White was for the modern woman, ignoring the fact that women everywhere had very different reactions. Because modern women aren't a monolith. And changing a character's gender role or moral arc doesn't automatically equal progress, especially if it comes at the expense of coherence, charm, and heart. And while Disney tries to clean up the mess, Zegler keeps making more. Her message may be rooted in progressive ideals, but her delivery has alienated the very audience she claims to champion. Instead of relating, she lectured. Instead of listening, she deflected. And instead of reflecting on the backlash, she went on the offensive. At a time when humility might have salvaged her brand, she chose to escalate. Now, studios see her less as a bold voice for change and more as a liability. Not because she's outspoken, but because she refuses to engage with feedback in good faith. You can't market a movie when the lead actor is at war with the audience. You can't sell a franchise when the star keeps calling the fans ignorant. And Hollywood knows this. That's why Zegler's name is slowly vanishing from big-budget headlines. Insiders say future projects are being retooled, casting decisions revised. Not out of spite, but survival. You can forgive a bad performance, you can forgive a bad movie, but it's hard to recover when every interview turns into damage control. In the end, Snow White won't be remembered for its visuals, cast, or reinterpretation. It'll be remembered as a cultural cautionary tale, a moment where a studio ignored its fans, where an actress ignored her critics, and where a fairy tale lost its soul, trying to become a manifesto. It's not the diversity, it's not the politics, it's the arrogance. And unless Zegler learns how to read the room fast, she may find herself not just out of roles, but out of relevance.